liberty, and justice for all.
And Robert McGowan, with the other bow tie, will give our invocation.
I thought it was National Sock Day. 18 fonts, still glasses. Today in history, I always enjoy looking back in history and seeing what occurred, but 55 years ago on this date, the Reverend Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And I would like to start to just give a few quotes. It shows obviously his courage, and I think these are words that are so applicable today. I say to you today, my friends, that in spite of the difficulties and frustrations of the moment, I still have a dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We are thankful for this club and our motto of service before self. We are thankful for this day and having the opportunity to live each day to the fullest. We are thankful for the military and all first responders that protect us. We pray for our national, state, and local leaders that they may lead with compassion and respect for all, even those with differences. We pray for all our members and our family and our friends who are amid illness, that they may be comforted. Amen.
Thank you. I'd like to have Terry is now going to come up and introduce our guests.
You wanted to say Laura, didn't you? Greg Juneau, would you introduce your guest, please?
My guest is Ken Kurspel. Ken retired from most appearance as a tax administrator. He's been in the tax administration business for about 25 years. And I've known him about that long, too.
Welcome. And Wes Shepard, would you introduce your guest, please?
My guest is Patrick Harrington. He's an attorney with Duke Thompson Law Office. He's also a member of the State Board of Governors for the State Bar and a former regent of higher education.
Welcome. We have a visiting Rotarian, David Ballou from the South Shreveport Club. David, where are you? Glad to see you again. Are there any other guests or visiting Rotarians? Great, thank you.
Okay, we're now going to introduce some new members. There's three, and I'd like all of them to come up at the same time in interest of time with their sponsors. We have Margaret Wallace with Russ Alsop, Gail Flowers with Allison Martin, and Dennis Poljak with Libby Murphy. Okay, Margaret, can you please introduce your new member?
It will be a pleasure to do so. It's my pleasure to introduce a friend of mine, Russell Alsop. Russell has lived in the Shreveport-Bossier area for the past 29 years. He graduated from Airline High School and attended Southern Methodist University in Dallas, receiving a bachelor's degree in finance in 2007. He then received his master's degree in accounting from Louisiana Tech in 2009. Russell currently serves on the Accounting Advisory Board at Louisiana Tech. Russell has been a CPA at KPMG for the past 9 years, serving as a senior account manager in the business tax practice. His specialty is serving publicly traded and privately held companies in the telecommunications, timber, and upstream and midstream oil gas industries. Russell worships at Heritage Baptist Church, where he also teaches Sunday school. Additionally, he serves as chairman of the diaconate and chair of the finance committee. Russell is on the board of regents for the Institute of Reformed Baptist Studies, Theological Seminary in Mansfield, Texas. He is an Eagle Scout and continues his interest in the Boy Scouts by serving on the board of directors for the Boy Scouts in the Shreveport-Bossier area. Russell does have time sometimes to enjoy his hobbies, which are reading, cycling, skiing, barbecuing, and working on his family farm.
Russell will be known as Russ for us, and you have a red badge, which over time will turn blue in its red, so the other members will know you're new and get to know you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail?
Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Allison Martin. She's a fifth-generation Shreveporter with strong ties on both sides of the river. Allison graduated first in her class from Centenary College. She earned her master's from LSU Shreveport, and she pursued postgraduate studies in linguistics from the University of Leicester in the UK, where she focused on computer-mediated language change. This year marks Allison's 20th year at Bossier Parish Community College. She served 14 years as a faculty member where she taught English and humanities and earned the rank of professor before moving into administration. She has served for the past 6 years as Director of Institutional Effectiveness Initiatives, where she directs strategic projects and facilitates faculty and staff professional development. Allison spearheaded our internationally acclaimed Open Campus. It's an open educational resource series that is now accessed in 208 countries, territories worldwide, and has earned the college 9 national and international awards for innovation. Allison and her husband Perry were married 39 years ago, and they have 2 children, 1 grandson. She's an active member of the University Church of Christ and volunteers through VOA's Veterans Transitional Living Program. I can tell you she'll be an asset to our chapter.
Allison, welcome to the club. Here's your red badge, and hopefully it'll turn blue soon. Okay, next, Dennis.
Well, hello everyone. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Libby Murphy as our newest member of the club today. And Libby is the president of the Louisiana Association for the Blind, often referred to as LAB affectionately. And before her current position, she served as in strategic development, as vice president of strategic development. Her primary role was in government relations, so it's a good audience today, right? LAB, I want to just divert from the script here and for a moment tell you about my experience with LAB here. I got to know the organization before Libby joined the organization, and what they do is incredible. Here at the club, we have so many wonderful organizations, nonprofit organizations that do so many wonderful things. And I see here Providence House represented, Food Bank, Holy Angels is here, Blood Bank, and all of that. And forgive me if I'm forgetting someone. What LAB does, and for those of you who have not visited LAB, please take the time to see what they do. It will change your lives forever. What they do is they provide employment opportunities to the people who are blind. They also employ people who are not blind. So we met some people, and all they want to do is be able to live a normal life, get dressed to work, catch a ride, it's 4-train bus, be able to walk to the terminal on their own, have a job, provide for their own lives, and then go back home and live a normal life. This organization does it, and it's just it's incredible what they do it. They also do a great job in combining nonprofit work with the private work. They're expanding, they're buying businesses, they're always looking for businesses to buy. And under Libby's leadership, they have just prospered tremendously and grown tremendously lately. Libby, welcome to the club. And again, I know you will be a great member. And again, thank you all for welcoming Libby here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to the club. Thank you, new members. We appreciate it, and welcome to the club.
Thank you.
A couple of quick announcements. The Rotary Brain Bus Committee will meet next door in room 209 right after the meeting. There will be a blood drive September 11th. See George Carroll to sign up. Congratulations to Rotarian Vernie Howard for being named the finalist in the Virginia Sheehy Most Influential Woman for 2018. Very good, Vernie. And now I'd like to have Leslie Quinn come up and introduce our program.
Congressman Mike Johnson is a Republican member of Congress proudly serving Louisiana's 4th District. He represents the nearly 760,000 residents of 15 parishes in the northwest and western regions of the state. Mike was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives on December 10, 2016, by the largest margin of victory in his region in more than 60 years. He was appointed to the powerful House Judiciary Committee and 2 of its subcommittees, the Subcommittee on Immigration and Border Security and the House Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, Homeland Security, and Investigations. He also serves on the House Natural Resources Committee overseeing American energy, production, mineral issues, fisheries, and several other key contributors to Louisiana's economy. As Vice Chairman of the Natural Resources Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations, Mike is one of only 3 freshman members to chair a subcommittee in the House. He was also appointed to the Subcommittee on Water, Power, and Oceans. Mike is a dedicated husband and father of 4. Before being elected to Congress, he proudly practiced as a constitutional law attorney and has devoted his life and career to fighting for the fundamental freedoms and traditional values that have always been a priority to the people of Louisiana. He continues to do that today as a U.S. Congressman. I am proud to be on his staff, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Congressman Mike Johnson.
Thanks so much for that introduction. I am really grateful to be here. I always look forward to being with this group because of your deep history and heritage and the extraordinary roster of members here. There's so many influencers in this room, and it's always a great honor to be with you. I saw in the program when I walked in, I'm supposed to give you an update from Washington, and there's a lot to update you on, as you all know. So I'll go through a few highlights, maybe a 30,000-foot view of kind of where we are as a nation, where we are as a Congress. But I really wanted to reserve most of the time for questions, if that suits you all, because I know there are lots of questions today about just about everything. I just completed what I think is our 39th town hall. We've been on August recess, and I use air quotes when I say recess because there is no recess in Congress. John Fleming should have told me that before I ran. But when we have August district work break, or whatever everybody calls it, for us it means we go to 15 parishes and do town halls, and everybody in the district, all 760,000 constituents, seemingly know that we are on recess, and so they want us to be in their town. So we try to accommodate as much as we can. But I really enjoy the town halls, and it's, to me, has been a great tragedy, a recent development in our politics, that a lot of members of Congress have just thrown in the towel. They don't do town halls anymore. You remember early last year, the vitriol in our politics was, it just turned really divisive and coarse, and there were paid protesters coming to town halls on both sides, and it just got almost out of hand. And so a lot of people said, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do community forums anymore. And to me, I just felt like that's a great tragedy, because of the divisiveness, it's never been more important, in my view, for members to go out and be amongst the people they represent, so that both sides aren't stereotyped and everybody actually gets to hear and have their questions answered. You know, in a constitutional republic, there are many things presupposed, but one of them is an informed and engaged electorate. And if we're going to have representative government, then the representatives of the people have to be with the people so they know what their concerns are and there can be their voices in the nation's capital. So we made that a campaign promise that we would do at least 2 town halls every year in each of the 15 parishes, and we've exceeded that now, and we're doing more because I find them to be very engaging, and the paid protesters stopped showing up after the first 4. So we've had some very productive forums. But when I'm out with the folks, I try to give they're usually about a 1 hour time period, so I try to give them 15, 20-minute update, and then we do questions for the rest of the time. But I just want to condense that to maybe 5 or 6 minutes to give you sort of a 30,000-foot view of where we are. So where we are as a country, update from Washington. So the first 18 months of the Trump administration and the 115th Congress has been really an extraordinary run in every possible way. I want to talk less about Twitter accounts and all the soap opera drama stuff, and more about what we've actually been able to achieve on a policy standpoint. Because you don't hear enough about that. I'm afraid there's so much attention paid to the soap opera nonsense, and so most people in the country have no idea really how many achievements have been accomplished in the first 18 months. So, if you do like a top 5 list, to me, I mean, you have to put the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act near the top. And regardless of where anyone is on the political scale, you have to look, by any objective measure, you have to look at that and say, that's been a great thing for the country. So we had the largest corporate tax cut in U.S. history. We had remarkable tax reduction on the individual side and just across the board. We reformed the tax code, which had not been done in wholesale style, I guess, since the early Reagan era, and it was long overdue. I was with Mike Pence early last year, right after we took our oath of office last January, and we were beginning to message and talk about the tax reform bill, which we worked on for many, many months. And he was in a forum, and I was there, and he stood up and said, the federal tax code is too complicated, it's too long, there's too many loopholes and all that, and he said, the length of it and the complexity is crazy. It's like 3 times longer than the King James Bible. And I was sitting in the back doing the math, and I said, oh my goodness, the Vice President's way off. And so I pulled him over to the side and said, Mr. Vice President, it's 60 times longer than the King James Bible. And it contains none of the good news. And he goes, oh, I love that. Can I use that? I said, sure. So he started using it, and only Kelly knows that was my line. But it was crazy. We needed to do this, and we did, and it's had the desired effect. So by reducing the rates, we've spurred on the economy. So we have record low unemployment. In certain demographics, African American demographic, Hispanic demographic, we have the lowest unemployment numbers since measurements have been taken. It's remarkable. The stock market is soaring, as you've all seen. We have consecutive record highs in the stock market. We hit 2 more records yesterday. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ hit all-time highs yesterday on the news of the new trade negotiation with Mexico. This momentum can continue if we continue with the same policies. And then the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was a remarkable landmark achievement, but the regulatory reform has been a big thing for business. And many of you are small business owners, and you work for large corporations, and you know. For too many years, the 4th branch of government, as we call it, the bureaucracy, had just kind of smothered the free marketplace, smothered the free market, the free enterprise system that we have, with all these just endless, burdensome, unnecessary, duplicative regulations on everything under the sun. And so when President Trump ran for office, you may remember, hey Elizabeth, my queen, come sit down front. I'm so grateful you're here. I love this website. She is the queen, Tom. I know. I'm giving you props right there. She's owed to walk in late. She's been such a great friend to me over the years. Okay, so when Trump was on the campaign trail, you might remember at the rallies he stood up and he was railing against the bureaucracy and the red tape, and he said, if you elect me, I won't do my impression. He says, we will not allow the federal bureaucracy to impose one more new regulation unless we first repeal 2 old ones. And it was a great applause line, but people rolled their eyes and said that'll never happen. The latest time I checked the ratio, we're 22 to 1. We're repealing 22 duplicative, unnecessary, burdensome regulations for every 1 new one. Yeah, it is. So again, this is not a partisan thing. This is just good for the economy. And so this is one of the, if you talk to a lot of business owners, they tell you, we really appreciate the tax cut, but the regulatory reform is the thing that's made the difference, and please continue that. And so that's our intention to do so. Another big campaign promise we made was to rebuild the military. And it's important for all of us, for all the obvious reasons of national security, but of course for our economy as well. The 4th Congressional District of Louisiana includes Barksdale, of course, as we all know, but also Fort Polk, the southern part of our district, the Joint Readiness Training Center. And these are critical military installations for the country. And so it's been very gratifying to be a part of reprioritizing that in terms of federal spending again. And so we've just given the troops the largest pay raise they've had in almost a decade, 2.6%, but it's the beginning of more to come. We're giving them the necessary resources they need for equipment and training and all the rest so that they can do the almost impossible job that we ask them to do now. It's a very dangerous time. It's a very dangerous world. There are terrorists and tyrants all around the world who aim to do America harm. They aim to be tyrannical and to take freedom from people, and in so many cases, in so many ways, we're the only thing standing in the way of tyranny taking over. And so we have to have a fully equipped military, and we're so grateful that we're getting that done. At the meantime, we're reforming the VA to take care of those who have served us. Remarkable reforms there I can unpack later if we have questions about it. And then on and on. From my perspective, one of the great things we've done is put in permanent pro-life protections in federal law to make sure that taxpayer dollars never go to fund abortion. We have re-emphasized energy resources. You know, that's a big thing for Louisiana, obviously. So right after Trump took office, he met with a Republican conference, and he said, I don't want to talk about energy independence anymore. He said, I want to talk about energy dominance. And so the whole Louisiana delegation was on the back row. We're all high-fiving each other, because you know what that means for us, right? And we've done that. So we've reprioritized. We're going to have more oil and gas production, domestic energy production. And we're all the above people. But we know that oil and gas is the lifeblood of our energy resources, and we're doing that again. We're going to be drilling more in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We have a working group I've been working on with our colleagues from Florida and others on the Gulf Coast. All of those, everything that happens in the Gulf is serviced off the coast of Louisiana. So all these things are great for us, and the momentum continues. In the meantime, we're remaking the federal courts. And for a lot of people, that's a top-line issue. That's one of the reasons they voted for Donald Trump for president. And look, I'm just going to say this. Before I got into Congress, I was a federal court litigator. I was a religious liberty defense lawyer and did things related to, the Bill of Rights. And so I would go into a court very often, and I would present a very simple argument on some of these issues. I would show the plain language, the black letter law, the black letter language of the Constitution, and I'm arguing before a judge, a federal tribunal, and explaining, well, the Constitution clearly says you must protect this freedom. And very, very often, over a 20-year career doing that, I would have federal judges look down the bench, down their nose, and say, effectively say, well, I know the Constitution says that, but we're doing a different thing now. I'm saying, a different thing? You can't do that, right? We've had a lot of judges over the last several decades who've been put on the federal bench who went there to make law and not, as Justice Scalia used to say, we're inventing a Constitution, we're not applying one. And so now President Trump made a commitment, and he is doing it. He's putting judges on the bench who will be umpires. They will be neutral, objective reviewers to apply the federal Constitution as originalists, as we say, because it means what it says what it means. And to me, that's a great development. And so from the U.S. Supreme Court on down, a lot of people aren't watching the federal district courts, the federal appellate courts. They're putting young originalists on the court. Some of my classmates are now, Kyle Duncan, for example, in the Fifth Circuit, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, which covers Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi. He and I were co-counseling all these cases. That guy knows the Constitution, and he will apply it faithfully. And he's 46 years old. He could sit on the bench for 40 years, right? So by far the longest lasting legacy of any president is who they put on the federal bench. And this is the thing that's really going to make the difference. I do believe, to answer your question the court's asked, I do believe Judge Kavanaugh will become Justice Kavanaugh by the first week of October, because there's absolutely no reason to uphold his confirmation. And I think he'll be a fine jurist, a fine member of the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, all the time, the Louisiana delegation, what we lack in relative seniority and number, because you remember from civics class, every state gets 2 senators, and I have to explain this in town halls. I know y'all get this, but a lot of people don't remember how this works. But each state is given a certain number of congressional seats based upon population, right? So we lost one a few years ago in Louisiana because of a census that went awry. And now we have 6 members in our House delegation. What we lack in relative number, because Texas has 38, California has 53. There's some larger neighbors. What we lack in numbers, we make up in esprit de corps. So our bipartisan group, which includes Cedric Richmond from the New Orleans area, our sole Democrat in the delegation, we work really well together as a team. Cedric and I have co-sponsored legislation together. We're always looking out for Louisiana, and all of us together are constantly advocating for our needs, whether it be water infrastructure, rich, or our transportation needs, highways, and all of the rest, funding for our military installations. And it's just been a great group to work with. I'm really humbled to work with this group, which includes Congressman Abraham, Congressman Graves, Clay Higgins down to the south part of the district, the Cajun John Wayne. You really got to meet him. I got to bring him up to see you. There's, of course, Steve Scalise, who is now positioned to potentially become the Speaker of the House. So I've been asked at all the town halls, does Scalise have a shot? I'm going to tell you, if we took a vote when we go back next week, Steve Scalise, I think, would be the Speaker of the House. He's the consensus candidate. Everybody respects him. You know what he's been through over the last year. And he's a favorite son from Louisiana. It would be fantastic for us. We have never had a Speaker of the House elected from Louisiana, and here he is poised to take that position. If the Republicans maintain the majority, and if Steve, for some reason, is not elected Speaker, he's almost certainly to be elected Majority Leader. And it's been a long while since we had one of those. So meanwhile, Cedric Richmond, our Democrat, my good brother from New Orleans, is currently the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Very powerful, influential position. And I have thrown my hat in the ring, some of you have seen, to be chairman of the RSC, the Republican Study Committee, which is where Steve started before he became Majority Whip. Mike Pence was a former chairman. But the Republican Study Committee is 150 members. It's the largest caucus of conservatives in the House. And it is, as was once said when it was founded in the 70s, it's intended to be the intellectual powerhouse of conservatives in the Congress. And it's the largest block of votes in the Congress, period. And so I wasn't going to do that. It's sort of presumptuous for a freshman to run for chairman, but the current leadership and fellow members recruited me to do it. I'm currently running unopposed. Somebody could jump in next week, but that election will be the week after our federal election cycle. It'll be the second week in November. If I'm able to, I mean, that obviously is a chair that drives policy for the whole country. It is just possible, I want you to know, that beginning January for the new Congress, you could have 3 Louisiana guys in post that effectively run the policy for the whole nation. And that would be a remarkable thing for us for all the obvious reasons. So maybe that's a prayer request. I don't know. We pray that all those stars align. It would be a great thing for us. We hadn't had clout like that in a long, long time. So that continues. A lot of things going on. I just wanted to give you a quick update, and I want to hear your questions. Real quick about the subject that I spoke with you about the last time I was here, which is probably a year ago, the commitment to civility. And I do talk about this at every town hall and in every public venue because I fear that in so many ways we are losing the soul of our country. I told the president on a cell phone call early last year that we have to remember the true source of our greatness. And what is the source of our greatness? I mean, all of you can articulate it, but a lot of people can't. We did the commitment to civility by way of quick review. So we get there in January, we go to the freshman retreat 3 days after we take our oath of office. There are 55 new members to the freshman class in the 115th Congress, Republicans to Democrats across the political spectrum from coast to coast. And they send us to the Colonial Williamsburg on a train so that we can get to know one another for a weekend right after we take our oath. Well, the problem was it started snowing on the way, so we literally got snowed into the hotel in Williamsburg. All 55 of us, and our spouses and children, and some of our top staff, and media, all in the hotel with snow piled this high outside the window. So we bonded more than maybe we had anticipated, but it turned out to be a blessing and a curse. So we spent a lot of time together. So as the snow began to melt, they were going to put us back on the trains 3 days into it, and somebody called an audible and said, let's have a members-only session. So we got 55 of us in a U-shaped table setting in a room about half this size. And everybody went around to give their parting, their camp kumbaya speech, right? Oh, what did I learn as 3 days here with all my new colleagues? And I was so struck because in every single person's parting comment, they said almost the same thing. I'm sick of the vitriol in our politics. I hate the way Washington is. Man, I wish we could do it different. When I decided to run for office, I committed to myself and my wife or my spouse, I was going to do something different. And everybody basically said the same thing, male, female, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, all the way across the spectrum. And I was so struck by that, and I thought, well, this sounds really great, but I wonder how many people would really commit to do that. Not just platitudes, but let's really do it. So I drafted this document called the Commitment to Civility, and I sent it around to all my colleagues when we got back. And I said, I wonder how many of you would be willing to sign on to this as an agreement we make, like a contract that we make with one another, that we're going to treat one another with dignity and respect, that we're going to treat one another as fellow Americans, not enemies, that we're not going to use epithets and hurl chairs and all that other nonsense. Let's change the tone. We can do it. Why not start with us? So 53 out of 55 members of the class signed on immediately, enthusiastically. And then a few months go by, and then Steve Scalise gets shot on the baseball field. And so the assassination attempt brought the lack of civility to the national consciousness more than it had been before. And so in the national media, there was, for a week cycle, everybody was talking about how the lack of civility is now leading to physical violence, and they're trying to take one another out, you know? And so the leadership of the Congress came to me and said, why don't you make your freshman class project Congress-wide? And so we did. So I started going individually to fellow members. Charlie Crist from Florida and I formed the Honor and Civility Caucus last December. And as of today, the update is for you, we now have over 150 members of Congress signed on to this document. And it's people are taking it very seriously, and it is helping to change the tone. Now, you won't know this by watching the mainstream media and all the national, shout shows tonight and all that, but this is happening, and it's a great thing. And it's leaders and luminaries from both sides. It's Kevin McCarthy is the majority leader, probably would be the speaker if Steve is not. On one side, all the way over to John Lewis, legendary civil rights leader who marched with MLK Jr. on that march on Washington and actually had the terrible task of speaking after him, after the I Have a Dream speech. Young John Lewis had to go to the podium and give his speech. But he signed on as well. So we have leaders across the spectrum, have a huge influence on the Hill and around the nation, and we're beginning to change the tone. And now the encouraging thing is we have local municipalities, county boards, and even some legislatures who have asked if they can borrow the language because they want to do the same thing in their governmental bodies as well. And we say we have no pride of authorship, take it. So look, I have some hope. Kelly and I'm the father of 4 children under the age of 17. I teach my kids the same thing you've taught yours and your grandchildren. That we follow the golden rule, we treat one another with dignity and respect. This is one of the things that makes America great, is our goodness. There's 3 things, I think, many things, but maybe among the 3 that are presupposed in a constitutional republic, and I'll shut up. One is that we have an informed and engaged electorate, informed and engaged, and that's a real challenge right now, we all know. Number 2, that we have a basic foundation of virtue. And the founders wrote extensively about how that foundation of virtue was to be grounded in religion and morality, and there's so many reasons for that, but you're going to have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Then if the people are going to be the sovereign, then you have to have a good people. You have to have virtue in the society, and so that was important. And the third thing I think is really important, presupposed for a constitutional republic to survive, is that you're going to have people that have very different ideas, very deeply held convictions that are and oftentimes opposed to one another, but that they're going to be willing to come around the table and arm wrestle together to forge what is the best consensus to move the ball forward for the most people and do the most good. That you don't ever have to compromise your core convictions, but you have to compromise your preferences, or else the system breaks down. And what we have right now in the country at the national, state, and even local level in so many places is we have a breakdown of that system. We have a breakdown of basic civility. We have a breakdown of this idea that people would come together and disagree in an agreeable manner. And if we don't get back to that, the rest of this is window dressing. I mean, that's who we are as Americans. We just had our 242nd birthday, July 4th. That's great. But 242 years is no time on the span of human history. It's nothing. We're still an experiment on the world stage. The founders didn't know how long a constitutional republic could last, and we don't either. But we do know there are certain keys that you have to maintain so that you can keep it. And I feel that we've deviated from that at our peril. So anyway, we're getting back to that. That's some good news. I want to give you a little bit of hope that the civility thing may be taking off. And we'll get a new batch of leaders that come in this election cycle in the fall. A number of those seats will turn over. And I'm going to go hit up every new member quick to try to get them signed on so that we can, the numbers go up and we continue the movement. So anyway, for what that's worth, thank you for that. Questions? Let me hear from you. Thoughts, concerns. I knew he's going up first. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Hey, Mike, we appreciate that tax break that we got, but unfortunately our governor and our legislature they decided they could spend our money better, so they took it from us in Louisiana. And the second thing is, I'd sure like to see I-49 all the way from New Orleans, 4 lane, not 2 lanes each way, 4 lanes each way, all the way up to Kansas, and stop building the 1945 standards. I've got to go over to Dallas, go up through Wichita, and cut back up to Kansas City, and the drive I've got to do. That could take 2 hours less if we finish up the
Great issues, questions. If you didn't hear it, completion of I-49. And what in the world are we doing in Baton Rouge? Don't get me started on that last one because I'll go for a couple hours and give you a quick summation. But on I-49, You know, there's been a lot of push. This people in this room have been working on this for almost 2 decades, right? It's inexcusable. We've got 3.5 mile stretch that we just got to finish, and then the roadway's done all the way. It'll be a great thing for the economy. There's been a lot of, you know, a lot of issue about the route and all that. I do believe the intercity connector is now going to be a reality. We were supposed to get a record of decision, the final, not to get too deep in the weeds, but there's a procedural process that Federal Highway Administration, everybody goes through to get this done, and we were expected to get that mid-August. And I was told, greatly frustrating me and many others that have been working on this, Committee 100 and others, that there's yet another delay because some paperwork was stalled somewhere in the system. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but it's inexcusable and we got to get it done. I think we're closer than we've ever been, and it's really important in the chronology because we've got to get the record of decision as the Shreveport Chamber and everybody knows, because we've got to go to the next step to get the funding to do it, because we're 600 million and some change, and the longer you wait, the more expensive it becomes to complete it. It'd be a critical artery and a great thing for Shreveport. So believe me, I work almost every day on the I-49 completion thing, and I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic that we're getting very, very close, right, Patrick? And yeah, okay, right. So we're working on it. On the thing about look, I'm just going to say this without getting too deep on the whole politics about state government. I'm just going to say this. How can I summarize this in 60 seconds without stepping on a lot of toes? I just want you to know that we have got to change the way that we do state government in Louisiana. I'm sure everybody in this room agrees with that. This is not a partisan issue at all. It's not about personalities or individuals. It's about how we do government. We're still doing government the way that we did it in 1930s under the Huey Long style form. We have a highly centralized hub of power in our state capital, and all the power is concentrated there in the hands of a small number of people. And basically what we do, I mean, to give a simplification of what we do, is we send all of our resources to Baton Rouge, and then they're handed out in patronage around the state and then through social programs. And, you know, some of the people who run that think that if they just have enough money, they can fine-tune the dials and usher in utopia. That never works. And by the way, in North Louisiana, we get left out all the time because we're the forgotten stepchild in so many ways from the power brokers in Baton Rouge, because it seems a world away to them. And it's a real problem. Meanwhile, states around us, like, oh, I don't know, Texas, right? They do a totally different form of government. You know, their legislature only meets every other year. Our legislature meets perpetually, right? There's 7 special sessions in a row. The legislature in Texas only meets every other year because there's no real reason for them to be there. They're really not all that powerful. The governor of Texas is not a very powerful position by comparison to Louisiana and most other states. They show up for natural disasters and they're a great figurehead, but they don't have a lot of authority. They don't appoint 1,000 commissioners to boards and everything all over the state, right? In Texas, they do independent school districts. They have an autonomy at the local, county, and municipal level. They have more efficient and effective government because the people who were voting for a millage or a property tax increase to build a new school or to build this or that, they knew who to hold accountable because it's their neighbors. They can see them in aisle 7 of Kroger on Saturday if they're not being efficient and effective using those tax dollars. So in Texas, everything works quicker, faster, more effectively, more efficiently. And it's not because Texans are any smarter than Louisianians. In fact, we're smarter, and I can make a case, and we have more natural resources. We have more blessing. We have better culture, better food, better family, better people, okay? But what's the excuse? The excuse is that the reason is not an excuse. The reason is they have a different form of government. Their government works more effectively and efficiently, and ours is outdated. And so we can't maximize all the great benefits that we've been able to achieve on the federal level like our neighboring states are because we're not set up to do that. And by the way, there's going to be a new infrastructure package very likely in the first part of next year, assuming the president is not impeached, and that's a whole other thing. But if the Congress keeps moving along, there's going to be an infrastructure package. There'll be some pile of federal money. We don't know exactly how much yet. But they've already said you're going to have a high degree of skin in the game for the locals and the state. You're not going to be able to access that money unless your state can come to the table and write a big check and say, we're going to do this portion of it. We're the least best situated state to have that conversation right now. And the president likes the art of the deal. And I can't bluff with empty cards, right? I mean, we've got to get our house in order real quick, or we're going to be left even further behind. So I can unpack that for another couple hours, and I shouldn't, but I think everybody in here agrees. This is not about personalities. It's not about party. It's about what is the best policy for our state going forward. And we got to have some very serious adult conversations about that in the next few months, or it's going to be too late. Yes, sir.
So your comments avoided health care altogether. Most people in this room have pretty good health care coverage, but so many people in our nation don't. What are we doing to improve that?
Great question about healthcare. It actually was in my notes that I never even pulled out of my pocket, so I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm glad you asked. So we tried to do a comprehensive healthcare reform package, as you know, last year. And John McCain, rest his soul, was the one that went and did the infamous thumbs down and killed our effort. I personally worked really hard on the final bill. It's a whole long story, but I was in the hallway when he did the thumbs down at 2 a.m. and I hadn't slept for a couple of days prior to that, and I cried like a schoolgirl in the hallway because I knew the implications of this. It was so bad. In Louisiana, our healthcare premiums have risen over 200% on average since 2013, and the sad news, the regrettable news, is there's going to be another premium increase announced later this fall, into September, early October. Blue Cross and all the others, we anticipate that's going to happen because the insurance companies are losing so much money under the Obamacare model. It never worked, and I don't have time to unpack and tell you all the reasons why, but just in short summary, so the idea behind the Obamacare model was we got this whole big pool over here of young, healthy people who don't really need health care and don't really access it. But we're going to force them to buy a policy that they don't want and don't need. For the first time in American history, the government forced us to buy a product. It was challenged, as you remember, it went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Roberts disappointed us. Chief Justice Roberts went with the other side, and so they upheld that model. So they mandated that you buy insurance coverage, and they thought all these tens of millions of young, healthy people were going to do it. Well, they didn't. They didn't because they said, well, you know what, I'm looking at that. Do I want to pay $800 a month for a policy with a bunch of bells and whistles that I don't need maternity care. I'm a 19-year-old triathlete, male. Why would I do that? So what's the penalty? Oh, I got to take a $250 penalty on my tax return? Give me the $250. I'm not doing that. And so everybody did it. So all the people that were supposed to buy the policies to fund the other pool over here, which is chronic illnesses, cancer patients, the elderly, and the infirm, those who really need it, the money never materialized because these people made rational economic decisions. I can't believe they didn't think that would happen, but they did. So what happened was all these guys take a little penalty on their tax return, and all these other people over here are standing here going, wait, we have all this expensive care. Well, the system was set up that it would crumble if this part wasn't fulfilled. So all the health insurance companies had to begin to raise premiums, and the Obamacare exchange is the same thing because they had to cover the cost, and there was no money there. So it's a totally unsustainable system, and that's what we're seeing right now. It's in the process of collapse. There are counties, whole counties in the country right now where no one can buy a health insurance policy. It's not available because the exchanges have collapsed, and there's no insurance provider that's writing for those areas. It's a disaster. Those who do have policies, the premiums have gone up skyrocketing through the roof. It continues to go up. Copays are just unaffordable. So we have to fix it. So when our bill went down in flames because of McCain's thumbs down and a few others, the reason I was in tears in the hallway, literally, is because I thought, oh my gosh, when are we going to have a chance to get back to this? We're not going to get back to it before the election cycle this fall. This was, many, many months ago, because I knew that it's such a political hot potato. Everybody in Washington will brush it under the rug and say, well, we tried, move on. And you can't move on because it affects every single American in one way or another. So what's the solution? Well, we got to get right back to it. I think we're not going to have any vote on it in the next couple of months. I'd be naive to tell you we would. But it's going to be a fever pitch, and the first part of the first quarter of next year, we're going to have to get right back to that. We're not going to be able to do a comprehensive reform measure like we did last time because there's just simply not the votes for it, but we'll have to do piecemeal individual fixes. One of the things is I could get way deep in the weeds, I don't want to, but the risk-sharing pool model that they did in the state of Maine several years ago is a great solution. Very short story. What they did was, instead of having a mandate that everybody buys a policy that they don't want and can't use, they put a $4 surcharge on every private insurance policy in the state on a monthly basis. They take that money, they put it into a pool, and they blindly take off the whole pool of all insureds, the high-risk, chronic illnesses, cancer patients. They put them over here. They don't even know they're over here because they're blindly selected for the state to supplement their costs because they have to because they can't afford it otherwise. And the $4 surcharge they put on every private insurance policy did enough to satisfy that. In the state of Maine, more people got coverage more excessively, more high-quality care across the board. It worked magically. That was 3 years before Obamacare was passed on the federal level. They mandated that Maine get rid of their thing, and so it evaporated. So we tried to take the Maine model and put it into the federal system because that, in addition to a few other bells and whistles, will help us bring premiums down, get more coverage and comprehensive care to more people that they can actually access, and that's ultimately the holy grail of what we're trying to do. So it's very complicated. We could do a whole 3 hours on this, but just know that there is a bipartisan recognition that we got to get right back to it, and if we don't, there are going to be pitchforks and torches on the lawn of the Capitol, and there should be, because it's inexcusable. Just because it's a political hot potato doesn't mean you can't fix it, because you have to, because we have to do it for the American people. So, yes, sir.
How you doing, Mike?
Curtis, hey, brother.
You and I go back to Capitol Street.
We do, my friend.
so I want you to be as candid as you can in this room when I ask you this question. You spoke in a cursory fashion about the civility in the country, particularly as regards you guys and what y'all do to represent us, the people in this country. And my concern is that whatever it is y'all hashed out in your document back in good old Colonial Williamsburg, close to where I went to school, may have been left there. Talk to me about the Republican effort to shoot down the efforts to secure our elections coming up here in the next couple of months. As I appreciate, there was a multi-million-dollar bill on the table and went down on party lines. Why is that?
Everything's on party lines, Curtis, you know.
Well, but we're talking civility. So
No, we are.
Why? Do you represent to us that our elections are secure coming up? Because I'm not seeing that. I'm sure you know more about it than we do, so please let us know.
I can do that a couple hours too, and you and I can riff about it. And by the way, I tried to follow you to WNL, Washington. He went to Washington and Lee from Captain Shreve. He was a really smart kid, and I went to LSU instead. But you were a great model for me, brother, and I wanted to do that. I might have made something of my life. I'd follow you through school. But look, here's the deal. We have to have integrity in our election system because it's sacrosanct and it's so critical to who we are as Americans, right? Both sides agree on that. We often disagree on the method to get there. And some of the without getting too deep in the weeds, some of the proposals on Nancy Pelosi's bill, okay, were objectionable to the other side. And look, I agree we have to ensure the integrity of the election system. How do we do that? We got to keep outside foreign influences out of it, which was a big problem. It was, and everybody knows it. I filed 2 pieces of legislation to fix that this year, bipartisan, by the way. One of them was the Foreign Agents Registration Act, because we had lobbyists representing foreign interests who are meddling in our domestic affairs and politics and elections without fully disclosing who they are, and that's a critical thing that we need to do. But that one failed. We passed it through committee, and it failed on the floor as well. There's a lot of politics involved in getting our politics right. Okay, but I'm gonna leave you this, and I know I'm out of time. The reason I mentioned the civility pledge is that every single person who signed on to that, they are being held accountable to it. And you can go name by name and see if anybody steps over the line that is a signatory to this, they are accosted by others in a friendly way in the hallway and say, you signed. And it's become like it's a joke, it's an icebreaker always with us in the hallway. When things get tense, we remind one another about our commitment to civility and that our children are watching and that the next generation is relying upon us to do this. We have to treat one another that way. I recognize and always remember that even, Nancy Pelosi, right? Sometimes we have been on the opposite ends of the table, arguing opposite ends of a policy position, but I don't look at Nancy Pelosi and see an enemy. I see a fellow American, and even though we might disagree vehemently about everything, she's genuinely arguing, I think, what she believes to be the best thing for the most people. She's arguing, as wrong-headed as I may think she is, she's arguing in good faith. And we can never doubt the motives of the other side, and that's where we get off, and that's where we get in trouble. We have to remember these are our fellow Americans. Our enemies are like, Kim Jong-un and ISIS, okay? Not Pelosi, right? And so we have to remind my colleagues of that, and others on the other side do as well. But we do better when we work together. We're never going to agree. As Ronald Reagan used to say, I'd rather get 80% of what I want than go over the cliff with the flag waving. And that's kind of my philosophy. Mike Huckabee said it best. He said, I'm a conservative, but I ain't mad at nobody about it. And that's how I feel, right? So you're a great model for that too, brother. Maybe you and I can go on a little lecture circuit together and do this. Come on, Curtis, you got time. You can do it with me. I'm out of time, I think. I am, Rich. Okay, take me off the stage. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Stay right here. Our congressman will stay for questions. If you have any, we do want to give you an honorarium power bank for your travels.
Right on.
So you never run out of power. And also, we're recognizing the Food Bank of North Louisiana with an honorarium in your name.
Awesome. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure enough. Thanks.
Okay, Stephanie is going to do our drawing.
Okay, we have
There you go.
$100, so we have $100, so 50-50. Hold on, let's see. For ticket 620801. 620801. Last chance. Last four is 0801. Okay, great. We'll try another person then. How about ticket 620861?
One more time?
Oh, we got one.
Ah, there we go. We got one.
Hey, wait a minute.
I didn't know. The first person should have spoken to her, take it again. All right, and then we have flowers from Rosemead for 620745. You got it, flowers, take them home.
We
Do we
have
have eggs?
2 eggs,
2 eggs.
2 drawings.
Oh, okay.
18.
18 eggs goes to 620686. 18 eggs.
Way in the back.
All right. And then this is what, for a dozen eggs? Okay. A dozen eggs goes to 620834. Last 3, 834. Dozen eggs,
Okay.
834. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I want to thank the folks that worked the desk today, Stephanie and Mike Sievers. The raffle was Graham Thompson, and money taker Milton Hutchinson. All our guests, welcome and hope you come back and visit. And for the 4-way test, Mike Sievers will lead us in the 4-way test.
Things we think, say,
Is the truth, is fair to all concerned, will appeal goodwill and better censorship, will be beneficial to all concerned. Rotary is adjourned. Go ahead and ring it.
I want this job permanently. I want to be the bell ringer.
Put your seat right here.
That's right, right here in the front. I just went by too fast.